Hello and welcome to the NIGP webinar, Better Collaboration for Better Campus Outcomes, how higher education procurement teams can collaborate more effectively with internal departments. Today's webinar is being brought to you courtesy of Bonfire. For those of you who have attended NIGP webinars in the past, you know that from time to time we ask someone from outside NIGP to provide their expertise and unique insight into an important issue we want to highlight to our audience. Across the years, those experts have represented both the public and private sectors, academia, and the nonprofit communities. All webinar content is presented strictly for educational purposes only and is not intended to be an endorsement of our speakers, organization, products, or services. Today's presentation is moderated by Balla and presented by Heather Vasquez. Heather is the Assistant Director of Statewide Procurement for Ivy Tech Community College and has been with the college for over 11 years. Heather is in charge of processing all of the statewide RFXs and purchases. Ivy Tech is the largest single accredited statewide community college and has over 40 site locations and teaches classes in 75 communities. Amanda is the strategic communications professional. Working in the procurement space, in her current role, Amanda manages marketing programs, working with her teams to create thought-provoking, engaging, and helpful content for procurement leaders. If at any time during the webinar you need technical assistance, please let us know in the Q&A box. During the presentation, you may submit questions to the Q&A box on your screen, and we will take them during specified parts of the presentation. Amanda, would you like to go ahead and get us started?
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you to Heather as well as to all of you for joining us today. We're looking forward to a great hour, and we hope that you'll come away from it with some key takeaways that you can implement for positive outcomes on your procurement team. I want to highlight that we will be discussing technology today, specifically e-sourcing tools and platforms. While we at Bonfire are an e-sourcing tool, the information sheet is relatable to many of the tools that are on the market currently, and there definitely are a plethora of tools that you can choose from to use for very similar results. What we hope to share today is information on a topic that we think is important to the market, as well as to explore ideas about how you can improve your day-to-day and increase collaboration for better results across your campuses. We hope that you'll find this information helpful, and we'll use it to inform your own research when you either begin or continue your search for new technology for your team or for an e-sourcing tool. As procurement professionals, you're instrumental in delivering the goods and services that your higher education institution depends on to function. Increasingly, you're gaining recognition as vital contributors to your institution's strategic goals. Although you play such a vital role, procurement departments don't always have the tools and technologies that they need to make their role as strategic as it possibly could be. We'll be reviewing this today, as well as how it could impact your institution and all the way down to your students. Today, we'll explore how higher education procurement teams can leverage technology to help increase collaboration with internal departments that will create better outcomes across the entire institution. Today, we'll be covering a number of topics. We will look at collaboration challenges and obstacles, technology and procurement, key benefits to technology, including cost savings and what those could mean for your institution, as well as evaluator participation and habits. And then we'll close off with a Q&A so that you can ask Heather and myself any of the questions that may come up during today's webinar. Heather, working at a college system that has over 40 locations and teaches classes in 75 different communities, how does your department work with internal departments? Do you have a centralized process that you use for the most collaboration possible?
Yes, we do have a centralized process in place for any purchases for statewide projects. We usually start off with a project charter, and then we move on to a business requirement documents where we work on the technical and functional requirements. And usually that combines not only the requesting department, but also our IT department as well, which will technology is usually involved in all the purchases we make, usually for students and statewide purchases, and we usually have those all submitted to the procurement department. That's usually how we collaborate together.
Okay, great. So it sounds like there's quite a few stakeholders and individuals that you're working with on every RFP that you put through then.
Yes, pretty much. Either it's always the requesting department, as well as like if it's for facilities, we work with facilities. If it's for the technology department, we work with the technology team. So it's just a wide variety of different areas that we can be working with depending on what's being purchased.
Okay, well, let's dive in and take a look at why strong collaboration is necessary for successful procurement. So it's definitely fair, and some of you may have this question, to really be questioning this notion of increased collaboration and why it's important. Because after all, your stakeholders do have to work with you if they want to buy something over your institution's threshold. They obviously have to go through procurement if it's over that threshold. However, what we found is that ensuring good collaboration in the process is still very important. And that's for a number of reasons. You want to ensure that the right products are purchased. In order to make sure that you're making the right decisions for your campus, you need to have the right people involved and make sure that you're getting their input. As well as for efficiency. When you have a strong relationship with stakeholders, things tend to go a lot smoother, a lot faster. There's less dragging of feet. It's a lot easier to get people involved. And that really means that it's then subsequently easier for you to do your job. And then the third point that we've highlighted here that we find very important is for customer satisfaction. Deloitte conducts an annual survey, and in that, CPOs actually noted that internal client satisfaction is the most important measure of success for procurement. And in contrast with other industries, it's usually the sixth most important priority. So it's obviously very important to have a really strong collaborative working relationship with the individuals who are within your institution. Heather, what do you consider to be some of the key elements of good collaboration between procurement teams and internal departments? And how have you really set the stage for a strong working relationship with others?
Well, I believe communication is the #1 key to good collaboration, in addition to respecting each other's opinions and thoughts. Basically, opening the lines of communication is a must for any good RFP. With any purchases, there's always several different areas involved, like I discussed earlier. So we all need to be talking with each other to make sure that we're all understanding what everybody wants and what the end result needs to be. That way, we make sure that we're purchasing the best equipment or the best software that's out there that meets our requirements at the most, the best cost possible. Basically, we want to make sure that we are all talking with each other and making sure that we get what the customer, the requesting department, actually needs and wants for that student or for that faculty member or for that staff member.
Definitely, and it's obviously, I think too, it helps to create a good working relationship when people likely feel that they've been heard and that their request is really being looked at very carefully and that you're really hearing what it is that they're looking for. I'm sure that that helps as well.
Yes, it does. Very much so.
So the bid and RFP evaluation process are really the most collaborative part of the process. The evaluation itself involves a group of individuals, generally from across campus. And furthermore, the outcome of these evaluation decisions definitely do have a wide impact on campus. However, what we've found is that the process is, in many cases, still conducted offline, whether that's through paper, email, Excel, or a combination of all of those. Even for institutions that are employing possibly a procure-to-pay suite for either catalog management or a basic bid posting tool for advertising opportunities, often the evaluation portion of proposals still takes place offline, again, over paper and Excel. This can be very time-consuming and cumbersome for both the evaluators who are taking part in the process as well as procurement teams. The manual time-consuming process really is a key source of the obstacles to collaboration that we find so many procurement departments facing. The obstacles that we often see is that procurement is either perceived as too slow or a roadblock. There's sometimes this idea of people seeing procurement as, adding red tape and slowing down the process. Also, the idea that the process itself is cumbersome. It can be a hassle for evaluators if they're having to bring large binders home, big boxes of paper, having lengthy evaluation meetings that are taking away from their regular full-time job. And also when it comes to geography, of course, a number of you probably work with institutions that have a number of different campuses like Heather does. And so you're often separated by geographic distance, and there can be different priorities for those campuses. And so it can really be a challenge to communicate and to get on the same page. So Heather, in terms of Ivy Tech, before implementing some additional technology and more of a formal online process, how was that process managed, and how did you really work with all of those different geographies and things of that nature?
Before bringing all the aspects of the RFP process completely online, we were doing everything manually, basically by hand. Everything was being handled through snail mail or email communications. That's also how we received the proposals, and also how we were doing the communications between the review team on the scoring and the evaluations of the documentation. So that was a little cumbersome at times, as I'm sure you can imagine. Sometimes those RFPs get pretty lengthy, and then trying to do it all online, well, not online, all manually, but then communicating all through email communication made it very difficult. Sometimes emails would get missed, or sometimes emails would go to the spam if it was from a vendor, and then they would follow up, and I'm like, well, I didn't receive that email. So that was something that was really challenging before, is all the manualness of it, especially when it comes to like the binders. I mean, I completely understand what you mean. Binders, we still have them that still had binders in it. That was pretty thick, actually. So going to the online process has made things a lot better. We did face all the obstacles that you were discussing. I mean, that's one of the problems that we always have is, procurement always is seen as the roadblock, or as the ones who's holding up the process, when really at the end of the day, procurement's job is to make sure that we do the best job possible to get you the best product for the best price, so we can make sure the students have the best experience at the college. So that's the main goal, but sometimes that doesn't happen when you're doing everything manual. So that's one thing that is nice with moving to the new way of life without the binders. Actually, everything's online, and now it's not so much of a struggle trying to get people throughout the state to actually participate and do things, since we're not doing it all manually. Because as you stated, we have campuses and regions throughout the entire state, and with me being central, they would all have to come to Indianapolis, and sometimes that's just not very convenient for stakeholders who have different job responsibilities just besides wanting to purchase something.
Definitely. Yeah, we hear a lot of those stories about the binders and the rooms full of boxes with papers, and a lot of people even still having to store those just to be able to go back if there's ever a bid dispute or a question. So we definitely
we've done that in the past before. So yes, it's much nicer if you have it all in one spot instead of having to go through the binders, take them out, and then scan them and copy them.
Right. So
hey, Amanda, before we continue, Heather, it sounds like your mic or your handset is rubbing up against something when you're talking.
Okay, is it better now?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. A little slight technology tweak there. Hopefully that sounds better for everybody there. So taking a look here at this procurement cycle, we find that with so many challenges and obstacles standing in the way of collaboration, procurement teams can very easily end up in this cycle that we've outlined here. So at the top, beginning with poor communication or failure to involve procurement in a timely manner, that can then lead to missing information and misalignment. So you're starting out the RFP process without actually knowing or having the full information that you need to ensure that the right item or service is purchased. Then that often leads to a purchase being delayed or ultimately not meeting the real needs of the campus, which obviously becomes a larger issue. And then that in turn leads to this idea of a negative perception of procurement. So you can see that there's this cycle that can really be obviously very detrimental to collaboration within the institution, as well as to the procurement department as a whole. Heather, is this a familiar cycle to you and your team? Have you felt kind of sometimes, that you're stuck in the weeds and not able to add strategic insight?
Yes, previously we had faced those similar cycles that you stated when it comes to RFPs. With, like I said, seen as the bad guys are the ones who will dragging their feet on the RFP and not getting it done in a timely manner.
Right. So we wanted to ask a quick poll question here before we move on. Just wanted to pause to get a better understanding of what current challenges you're facing when it comes to collaboration with stakeholders throughout the procurement process in your institution. So if everyone doesn't mind just taking a couple of seconds just to pop in an answer there, whether that you find that procurement becomes involved in the process too late, it might be difficult to get on the same page with stakeholders and figuring out what they really need, or whether it's difficult to give each stakeholder the time they need to outline their needs simply because you have so many requests and so many RFPs that you're running. Or it could be something else entirely, and feel free to pop that in the chat and let us know what challenge you're facing. We'll just give you another couple of seconds to answer that before we move on.
And here are the results, Amanda.
Okay, perfect. So it looks like 61% of respondents actually are experiencing something very similar, which is that procurement is involved in the process too late. Then we see that 20% of you are finding it difficult to get on the same page, and 17% finding it difficult to give each stakeholder the time they need to outline their needs. But so it looks like a resounding over half are finding that procurement is just becoming involved in the process too late. Heather, is this something that you've experienced in the past, and how have you kind of changed that, and how have you been able to change that?
Yes, I completely agree with everybody on the webinar. Then yes, that's one of the key problems is procurement's always involved way too late in the process, and by then so many people, they've done so much, they've invested so much time and effort into getting the stuff together that they want and that they want to buy, but then when they bring procurement in, and then that's where we come in and we look like the bad guys, or we're the ones holding everything up because we have to put a halt to what they've done. So that is one thing that we repeatedly stress over and over and over as much as we can to every area within the college, that just bring us in to begin with. We don't have to necessarily be involved from day one, but let us know what you're doing, what you want to accomplish. That way we can help guide you and assist you, so you don't waste your time, or you don't make commitments or make purchases that you shouldn't be making to begin with. Basically just restating it to people over and over, I think it's starting to get through finally, because people are coming to us at the beginning stages now, even before they even have a thought of what they want. Hey, we were thinking about this. Now they're coming to us. So that's really helped alleviate the issue of us being brought in too late, because unfortunately it does happen a lot. And when it does happen, you have to come in, you have to stop everything. And then it just seems like it's procurement once again delaying everything. At the end of the day, it's not. We just want to make sure you get the right product.
Right. Sorry, Heather, it seems like your mic is breaking up a little bit again. So maybe if you could just move it a little further back. I think some people on the line are getting a little bit of feedback there.
Okay, I'm good.
That's a little bit better, I think. So have you found that it was just communication, and that's what really helped getting people to bring you in as part of the beginning of the process, or what was it that you found really changed to actually get people bringing you into the process earlier?
Communication, basically just, restating it again, just, hey, we're here to help you. That's all we're here to do, is to help you and make sure you get the best product out there. Just reminding them that we're here to help, and we're not here to take it over or to tell them what they need or what they don't need. I think that's the feel sometimes, is that we're going to tell them what they need to do, and we just want to help them get the best product.
Right. Okay, great. I think that's some great insight. So though it may not seem like it on the surface, poor collaboration actually definitely has a real and true cost. And what we found is that there are three main ways that poor collaboration can cost your institution. The first being the cost of staff time. An inefficient process really does cost your campus in staff salaries. We'll discuss this a little bit more later, but the average hour-long evaluation meeting costs $231 in staff salaries. And that doesn't include the time spent on the evaluation outside of the meeting, which is usually a minimum of several hours per evaluator. So you can see how that really starts to add up. And then when we look at what goes into a bid or an RFP, we see that literally thousands of human hours go into the evaluation of a bid or RFP. So if the process is inefficient, for example, if you're going back and forth with evaluators, if there's miscommunication, those lengthy meetings that seem to stretch on, the cost definitely increases as well. Secondly, we see that, as we've discussed, the products or services could end up not meeting the need that's been set out from the beginning. So if you have misaligned specifications, that means that the project doesn't meet the need, and then there's obviously a higher cost for your campus. That can either be through change orders, cost overruns, if the project scope is changed or expanded after the onset, or if you need to implement workarounds, or if there's any lost efficiency as a result of a good or service not performing as intended. And then there's also, in the worst case scenario, the cost of rerunning an RFP. So obviously, if you go through this entire process, take up everyone's time, have all these meetings, have evaluators coming in, there's obviously a high cost if you need to rerun that process all over again simply for that one RFP. So just a quick example would be this idea of if you were buying new lab equipment for one of your campuses. If the wrong specs are provided at the onset, then the wrong product will obviously be purchased. Lab staff either have to make do, which could slow down their work, or redo the project. Then, of course, you see a trickle-down effect, because then you have a poorly equipped lab, which inhibits the ability to pursue leading research and then recruit students even. So as you can see, you can't necessarily put a concrete dollar figure on it conclusively, but there's definitely a clear trickle-down effect on the campus. And then the third issue that we see as one of the main issues is that procurement strategic contribution can sometimes then really go unrealized. So with buying insight across the campus, procurement is definitely able to contribute valuable strategic input. However, as you know, this requires you to be brought in as a partner early in the process so that you can consider the best buying vehicle, work closely with individuals, really to determine the best solution. But if you're bogged down by going back and forth with evaluators, or even standing at the photocopier, making copies of things, creating scorecards, this oftentimes results in, you're just seen as more of a function rather than as a strategic contributor to the campus. Heather, have you experienced any of these costs in the past? And maybe if you can just try again to hold that microphone back a little bit further so we don't get that feedback. Hopefully that'll work for everyone.
Yes, we've experienced that too. Hopefully it's better. I can hear.
Yes,
I can hear
that is definitely better. That's
okay.
Better.
Yes, full collaboration costs everyone who's involved in the RFP, not just procurement, basically the requesters as well. We all need to be talking with each other and listening to ensure that we're purchasing, like you said, the correct lab equipment. We don't want to waste the time of procurement or of the requesting department or reviewers or even vendors to participate if we're giving them the wrong specs to begin with. A big cost is not bringing procurement or IT in soon enough. I see that a lot, primarily from the IT department initially, now I'm procurement. But that's one key thing I do see over and over when we have these costs is because they haven't brought in the technology department and asked them for their advice or for their opinion. Because at the end of the day, we all know technology, but IT lives it. So they understand what needs to happen, what needs to be purchased, what can go with what. So that seems to be the biggest cost that we've had in the past. It's gotten better over the years because, like I said, just communicating again and again, we're just here to help. That seems to be doing the trick. But yes, I mean, you don't want to waste anybody's time, especially vendors, because vendors will stop participating in your RFPs if every time you have to reissue it or cancel it or say, hey, let's go ahead and just get you to requote this all together, because their time's just as valuable as our time is.
Right, I think that's a great point about vendors as well. We kind of, there's collaboration with vendors as well, which is very important because you do want as many vendors as possible to submit on all of those bids and RFPs. That's a fantastic point to make.
Yes, very much.
So taking a look at where technology and training fits into the majority of procurement teams, we can see some interesting stats here. So we see that 72% of procurement teams spend less than 2% of their annual budget on training. we see that 51%, so just over half of procurement leaders actually do not believe that they have the capability on their team to deliver on their current procurement strategy. So I think that's a very important point to take stock of, given the fact that it is just over half of the respondents. And then we also see here, conversely, an interesting number that's very low, given that 7% of procurement leaders report substantial digitization of the procurement function. So very interesting to see that, it's such a low number of individuals within the procurement space that have been able to begin digitizing the function, when oftentimes you're tasked with bringing in different technology into the institution, really creating a leading edge campus, but you're forced to use old processes. And then we also see here that 60% of procurement teams either have no tools or rely on improvised manual processes for procurement workflows, which again is quite a high number. So as you've seen so far, and you'll continue to see throughout today's discussion, the benefits of adding technology can really be quite substantial and can actually really help in your day-to-day, and the trickle-down effect does go all the way through to vendors as well as to your students. So looking at some of the benefits, let's now turn a bit and take a look at how bringing in some new technology and digitizing the bid and RFP evaluation process can help procurement teams facilitate better collaboration and achieve benefits, which do include cost savings, which I'm sure a number of people are likely interested in for your campus. So this first key benefit that we're looking at here is this idea of cost savings, and really how centralizing the sourcing process can help to reduce costs. So time savings definitely equals dollar savings. Having documents that are centralized saves time. They're easy to find. Everyone from the procurement team members to evaluators can easily find what they need, so you're not spending a chunk of your day scrolling through those long email trains or even looking through physical boxes. As we touched on just briefly, an easier process can also mean additional vendors, which then leads to better pricing. There definitely are substantial savings, as I'm sure you all know. What we normally see is between 3% to 5% of savings are seen just by adding one single vendor in the submission process. And you're likely to have new vendors submit who sometimes can't if you're using a manual process because of the high cost. For a lot of these smaller vendors or newer vendors, it can be very expensive for them to create a lot of color copies, a lot of binders, sometimes even just shipping them to you or to a number of different campuses can be very difficult for them. So we're finding that a lot of the time, more vendors will participate when bids and RFPs are put online, which is definitely a positive. And we're actually seeing that more and more vendors actually expect it and prefer to be able to submit entirely online. They'll usually get a nice check mark at the end, knowing that they've submitted everything they need. They don't have to worry on their end if they've submitted everything necessary, which is always fantastic. Another benefit in the cost savings bucket is this idea of more productive time. Teams can really be more strategic and procure better items at a better cost, or better items that lead to happier students and subsequently better school rankings, which typically translate into higher tuition dollars. So you can see here that everyone really does win. And then this idea that we've talked about is, less manual mistakes, which means buying the right product the first time. As we previously mentioned, it can be very costly, especially if you had to do something like go back and rerun the entire RFP. The second key benefit we'll explore today is this idea of having one central online location for collaboration and what that really equates to. When you're managing a bid and RFP evaluation offline, files are stored locally. They have to be sent by email with scorecards, which can be time consuming. There's a risk of errors. I'm sure a lot of you have run into this in your day-to-day, either now or in the past. There's also these long email trains to communicate with evaluators. Always very difficult to go back and find information. There's the risk of lost documents or missing information, which can also be very important and key if you ever have a bid dispute arise as well. And it also means that you, as procurement leaders, spend a lot of time keeping all of this information together. So you're collating proposal information, aggregating scorecards. That leaves less time for strategic work, which is likely the work that you want to do and the reason you're doing the job that you are, because you want to provide that strategic value. You were obviously hired to do a lot more than copying and filing, and you want to be able to do that. So when you're managing the bid and RFP evaluation online, we find that from drafting specifications to awarding a decision, every step is centralized and in one online location. And for teams that have a number of different campuses, it really does create a virtual home base for buyers and stakeholders. So you have somewhere where you know you can easily log in and go to and find all of the information that you need. And you can even collaborate virtually on specification development, access project details, communicate, and really make sure that everyone has the information that they need to make informed decisions, which is really key here. It also gives buyers visibility into the bid and RFP process, so you can really be proactive in managing that bid and RFP rather than reactive. For example, you can see real-time dashboards on evaluator scoring progress, so you can see if someone's even opened up a project or not. If they're 50% done or 60% done, so you can easily follow up with them prior to an evaluation meeting, instead of wasting time going to the evaluation meeting and then realizing that one or two of the evaluators haven't completed everything that they need in order to take the next step in the process. Heather, it would be interesting to see your take on this because you're buying for so many different site locations. So I imagine that this is something you run into quite a bit. So how do you work with stakeholders that may be very geographically split from you?
Well, before we had the technology in place, it would all be done via the phone or the email. Now with the technology in place, most of it is being done within the online tools. So, like I said, the technology has really helped change the RFP process and the playing field itself. Before we had the technology in place, it was very challenging trying to coordinate and work with the stakeholders who are not local. Again, as I stated, we're all over the state. So now once we've implemented the technology and we brought everything online, it has made the process of doing RFPs statewide now a lot easier than what it once was.
Great, I'm sure there's lots of time savings there, which is always great for everyone.
Yes, it does make it a lot easier with it all being in one spot. And then, like you said, the dashboard showing the progress, I can check it and they can check it themselves instead of, sometimes they still email me. It says I'm 100% done. I just want to double check. And that's okay. I'd rather them do that just to be on the safe side. But yeah, the dashboard is really helpful.
Great. So another key benefit that we see is this idea of timely evaluation. We've talked about this earlier in today's webinar, but one of the biggest complaints that procurement hears from stakeholders is that it's too slow. It can definitely be a real challenge to keep up with the demand when you're running a manual process. So we find that a lot of different institutions who have brought the process online, it really does unlock many efficiencies. You can get bids and RFPs done faster. It reduces the amount of time spent on manual tasks. Even something as simple as not having to tabulate scores can really give you back a lot of time in your day. You can capture audit reports automatically, reducing manual reporting time, and also reduce the necessity of as many in-person meetings as you're having. We find that feedback is a lot of the individual procurement leaders have said that they've been able to have less meetings, which I'm sure sounds great to probably everyone on the line, and that those meetings are actually more productive and efficient, which is always fantastic to hear. And just focusing on that last point for a minute, we've found in our research that higher ed campuses in particular seem to have a great deal of meetings. Convening and carrying out evaluation meetings can be among the most time-consuming and probably for all of you, frustrating as well part of the RFP process, both for procurement teams and stakeholders. So as we see here, they also come at a cost to your institution. So just going through these stats here, we see that 35% of managers' working hours are spent in meetings. 71% of meetings are actually deemed as unproductive and inefficient, according to a survey of managers. So that's a very high percentage when you think of the amount of time that's spent in meetings that feel unproductive and inefficient. And then going back to, we mentioned this earlier as well, that $231 in staff salaries are generally spent on an average hour-long evaluation meeting. So once you add all of this up, you can see that there are really a lot of costs to these meetings. And then bringing it down to the amount of people, typically there's about 4 to 5 evaluators on the average RFP evaluation committee, and some of you likely have more than this as well. I think, Heather, we've talked about you having more generally as well. But just if you're looking at a baseline of 4 to 5 evaluators, you can see the cost is really quite high when you multiply that across all of those individuals. And there's just such a number of challenges that come along with these meetings. Trying to find an open time in everyone's schedule that can sometimes seem to take 20 minutes in and of itself. Ensuring evaluators have completing that scoring beforehand, and then keeping the meeting on track or avoiding that, one loud voice that's kind of pushing everyone in one certain direction. Heather, in your experience, what are some of the challenges that you've come up against in the evaluation meeting component of the RFP process, and how do you manage those?
Most of the challenges that we have seen come up during the evaluation meetings are people just aren't prepared. They really haven't taken the time to actually to look at the proposals yet. And so when they come in, we basically kind of have to do a recap of, okay, well, this is what this proposal was, and this is what this proposal was. And so that just, slows everything down. And then you have people who did do the review that get kind of irritated as well. So just basically not being prepared for the evaluation meetings is the most common problem I've seen. Now with, using the technology that has actually saved quite, like you said, not as many meetings are needed. Most of it can be done via online, so that has tremendously helped as well. Because like I said, the main problem is just people not being prepared for the meeting.
Definitely. And if you were to speak to a new procurement officer about to go into their first evaluation meeting, my apologies, what would your advice be to them? What would be some tips to make it go smoothly?
I would just tell them to basically just be patient and aware that it may not be a very productive meeting the first time around, and just basically say, each time it does get better, because like I said, communication, I cannot say this enough, is key to everything in life. Is communicating always makes things better. So as time goes on, each time these meetings do get better, especially once the technology is in place. That's what I would tell the new person.
Fantastic. Great advice. And we had talked a bit offline as well, I think, about you being able to include more evaluators in the meeting process now. Is that correct as well? You've been able to bring in more people and get some different perspectives?
Yes, the one thing that has been very nice about using the online system is that we can actually, I know 4 to 5 is usually the normal, but for most of the ones we do, because like I said, the statewide ones, it's usually between like 10 to 15 people. So that was not really doable before when it was all done manual, because trying to have to keep up with 15 to 20 different people, making sure they're turning in their scorecards or actually reviewing them and all that stuff. So by having it all online, now we can really have a full panel of a full review panel of different areas, because as you're aware, each RFP involves so many different areas, so you want to have a representative from those different areas, not just 3 or 4 people. So that's been one thing that's been very nice, is to be able to open our horizon to more contributors when it comes to reviewing the proposals and scoring them, which I think in the long run has helped us get the best product available.
Fantastic. Yes, I was going to say you've probably been able to make a lot better decisions having so many different people involved in the process and providing their opinions and insight based on different backgrounds, which is also great as well.
It's been very helpful. Yes, it has.
Fantastic. So looking now at another key benefit, which is easier evaluation, easier evaluator participation. So we all know that evaluators are busy people. You might be working with researchers, administrators, staff members. Procurement is likely one task at the end of a very long to-do list that they have. And looking at some anonymized data here that we see, we can really see some patterns in when evaluators are doing their scoring. We see that 10% of scores occur on the day before the deadline. So evaluators are frequently busy doing their full-time job, and they often don't get around to doing their scoring until the last minute, which is obviously very understandable given the fact that, as we've mentioned, this isn't their full-time job. This is something that they're adding on to their daily tasks. Interestingly, we also see that 27% of scoring happens outside of work hours. And so we found that having an online platform or some type of system where evaluators can easily log in and complete their scoring wherever and whenever they want has been very beneficial. Also, there's the confidentiality element of people bringing paper proposals home. So on a software platform, they can easily be mobile, while also ensuring that confidential documents are password protected and secure. You don't have any issues of people, bringing these large binders home, leaving them in their car, possibly someone breaks into the car, takes those home, and then you have a whole other set of issues that you need to worry about. When managing the process on paper and spreadsheets, evaluators really do have to sort through papers and scroll through spreadsheets in order to complete the scoring, which is very tedious. And they often either run out of time or it slips their mind. As we've mentioned, a lot of them coming to meetings without looking at what they need to have reviewed beforehand, which really sets everyone back in the process. So again, if you have this centralized area, individuals are able to log in, do some scoring whenever it is that they'd like, and it can also be more targeted. So you can actually really segment your proposal information easily. So evaluators are only reviewing the relevant information. They're only seeing what they need in order to do their scoring and make their decision. They can get in, contribute their expertise, and then get back to their day job. And this really not only makes the process easier, we find that it also makes evaluators more willing to participate in the future. It's not as difficult to chase these people down and ask them to participate. We've found that individuals really are more likely to be more willing to go through the process. And it obviously saves their time so that they're doing their day job and what it is that they're being paid daily to do, rather than taking time away from that. Heather, on your end at Ivy Tech, what has the feedback from evaluators been like in terms of using a type of digital tool? Have you noticed that people are maybe more willing to participate, or that that relationship has been a bit better?
Yes, the feedback from all involved has been very positive. The digital process has really sped everything up completely within the RFP process, from the time it's released to the time it's, submitted back by the vendors and reviewed. By using the new technology, we're able to do a lot more RFPs in a lot quicker time. All of the information being in one spot is very beneficial, as they don't have to look at the different binders, and they can, like you said, view it from home, from their mobile devices. And unfortunately, we're all real busy, and we have a lot of stuff that can't be done during business hours sometimes, so that's been very beneficial. And I do have people more willing to participate in scoring these proposals now, since it's all being done online.
Right, and you mentioned there briefly, you've actually been able to take on more RFPs as well. Is that correct?
Yes, it's really, I've been doing the RFPs here for quite a while now, and I know when it was the paper, I just dreaded doing them. I really did. I didn't look forward to, I don't look forward to them at all, but now with this moving to an online solution, it's really just like night and day. It really has helped me become more productive, as well as giving the tools to my coworkers who can actually be more productive too by doing it all online. And the vendors have also been very happy with, like you said, doing it all online. I think we pulled a report here not too long ago, and we've had over 600 vendors registered for our online system in the last 3 years.
Great. So it sounds like getting a lot more participation and more willing participation, probably from evaluators, as well as increasing that vendor database. So it sounds like it's been good all around, which is great.
Yes, it has. I really appreciate the system.
So before we turn it over to your audience questions, we just wanted to pose one last poll question here to see what the biggest obstacle has been for you in implementing procurement technology in your own institution. So if you haven't yet brought on technology, are any of these the reasons or the issues that you're coming up against? Whether that's securing budget, onboarding a supplier community, managing the change within your procurement team. We all know that sometimes people are resilient or concerned about change. Even if it might be more positive, people can be concerned if they hear that a process is going to be changed. Or was it getting buy-in from internal stakeholders? So we'll just give you a couple more seconds to answer that one, and then we'll take a look at those results.
And here are the results.
All right, so it looks like they're pretty mixed. The largest one here at 38% was securing budget. We obviously hear that often. 13% onboarding the supplier community, 21% managing change within the procurement team, and then 29% is managing buy-in from internal stakeholders. So Heather, what do you think of these results in terms of that largest one with the issue of securing budget? Do you have any advice for how people can kind of bring this idea forward and get others on board with providing budget to the team?
Yes, I think, sorry, I'm trying not to feedback. I think the budget is always a key factor for any college, regardless if you're community or not. Basically just building a good case study, a good justification for why this system will help speed up the process, save money, and in the end, get you the better product or the best pricing out there. I think that's the key. Is you have to justify it. You have to build your case for why you want the new technology. That's one thing we always face here at Ivy Tech, because we're a community college and funds are always tight. So that was something we had to do initially when we first got the system, was to prove that, hey, this is going to in turn save us time and money and ultimately give us more opportunities to send more RFPs out, again saving money, again helping the students and the faculty and staff.
Right, so really that strong business case that shows that
Yes.
trickle down effect that we've touched on a couple times here.
Yes.
And in terms of managing the change within the procurement team, because that's a concern for 21%, how do you find that transition and what the best way is to onboard people and discuss implementing a new process within the actual procurement team itself?
Well, the procurement team, we didn't have that obstacle here because we really were looking for an online system. And when I say procurement team, I mean 3 people. So we really needed a system. Is hence the reason why we needed to get one in place, because when you're limited on the number of staff you have, you're limited on a number of things you can do. So the buy-in for the procurement team was relatively easy because we knew it would make our jobs easier and help us be able to accomplish many more RFPs.
Right. Okay, great.
And obviously, if you have a big procurement department, nobody likes change, and technology is, sometimes hard for people to learn. But the one thing I can say from all of my stakeholders, my evaluators, and my vendors is most systems out there are very easy to use and not challenging to learn. So I know the system I use is that way, and I know I've looked at other systems out there, and they all seem to be the same way, very easy to use. So that makes it a lot easier.
Great, and I think that idea too that you were talking about before of that open communication, just kind of letting people know what to expect, we find is always positive as well.
Yes, it is.
Great. So just before we turn it back over to you, Justin, I see there is one question that's come in about the source of the meeting statistics. They are actually from a number of different sources. We have a white paper that we can certainly send to you following that does outline all of those statistics and show all of the sources and where those are from. So Justin, we'll toss it back over to you so we can go through some of the Q&A and see if there's anything anyone wants to know more about.
Thanks, Amanda. So we had one question pop up in the Q&A box. Is this an on-premise or cloud solution?
So this is a cloud-based solution, what Heather is describing that she's speaking of today.
Great. Moving on to the next question, what was the most complicated part of adding technology to your team?
The most, as with anything, just getting people to actually try to get on it and use it. Like I said, I can tell them it's easy and all that stuff, but until someone actually logs in and actually looks at the system, this is how I've always done it and I want to continue to do it that way kind of attitude was the most challenging.
And how did you overcome that, Heather? Was that just a lot of communication and trying to help people get on and walk them through it?
Yep, basically communications and doing one-off training sessions with people. I mean, basically once the person got in there and actually started moving all around and all the different helpful hints and, you know, the help box at the bottom. I mean, really after a while, they're like, you know, I'm good. I'll go ahead and play around. If I have any questions, I'll get with the help box. It was that easy. It's just getting someone to actually get out of the rut that they're in and actually get into the system. That was the hardest part, just to get them to set up the account.
Right, it's the changing of habits and what people are used to, right? Even if it's better, it's so hard for them to see that on the onset, I imagine.
Yes, it is.
Great. In addition to an e-sourcing tool, is there any other technology or practices that you've introduced to increase collaboration?
That's the only technology that we've introduced recently. Just basically trying to standardize. Standardization is key, I think, and just having the same steps and the same process instead of, I think before there was just everybody kind of did it their own way, but then as time went on, we decided, you know, hey, we need to have a set process in place and set steps. You know, if this is facilities, they need to do it this way. If this is for the IT department, this way. So just having best practices in place really helped.
Yeah, we've heard from a number of other people before as even not touching on technology, but something as simple as making sure that, you know, everyone's saving things in the same way, that everyone's using the same system within folders. Things like that can really be time savers and can really help that collaboration because you feel like you always know where to go to read documents and things of that nature.
How do you handle evaluators who are not interested in participating?
Well, there's the right way and there's the wrong way. I mean, obviously, you just want to keep on reminding them, hey, this is the end result is going to benefit you. I mean, I'm here to help. This particular product may not even affect me in no way. So basically, I'm here to help you, but this is for you. If you do not sit there and score these proposals, then at the end of the day, if you're not happy with the results or the product you get, then you really cannot say anything because you did not take the time to actually review the documentations or the proposals or to provide your feedback or comments, because at the end of the day, with the tool we have, it actually does calculations and summaries, and we actually do all as a team look at that together, and we look at the comments, we look at the points, and we look at what the general consensus is. So I do remind people that, hey, you want to do this because this is for you. This isn't for me. If you want the best product or you want to make sure what you want out of that product is included, then you have to go in and you have to look at these and you have to score them. Usually I don't get too much pushback because, like I said, at the end of the day, it's their project, it's something they want to purchase. So usually, unless it's something like a boss is throwing them on at the last minute, I don't usually encounter that too often.
I just want to remind everybody, if you have any questions, please place those in the Q&A box or the chat box. And we have one last question. How have vendors reacted to the new technology?
Within, like I said, the last 3 years, we've had over 600 vendors. I mean, they're just ecstatic with the system. Before, we didn't have actually one place where you could go and send a vendor to, say, hey, these are all the open procurements. So this is one thing that is new for us, and that has been very well received by vendors, because usually they'll just send me an email, hey, do you have any of these coming out soon? Or can you put me on your list so I can make sure I get these? But now with them signing up to be in the system, they actually get notified now. When we post an opportunity, that vendor will get notified if they click that box to be notified when we release something. So I'll go out and I watch my RFPs, and I watch who downloads them and all that stuff. So I want to make sure that the people are seeing it. And then I know before, like when we first got the system, I'm like, why is a construction company downloading something for software? And then I'm like, okay, they're just looking to see every opportunity that we post, just to see, because hey, maybe it might be something that they can help us with. But yes, the vendors really love it, because they said they can check it and make sure they see that check mark box that says, yep, they uploaded all their documents. All the communications can go through the tool as well, and they upload all their information at one place. I mean, I've had nothing but positive feedback from all the vendors.
Great, thanks, Heather. Amanda, Heather, do you have any closing comments?
Heather, was there anything you wanted to touch on or add before we close off?
No, that's it. I mean, besides, I mean, honestly, if you're on the fence about getting an online tool that we're discussing, honestly, there are so many different products out there. You should just really take the time to go out and maybe just demo a product and see, because it's made my job here at Ivy Tech so much easier. I mean, I just love my tool. I hope I never get rid of it, and I hope I always have a budget for it.
Yeah, just a big thank you to everyone for joining us today. Heather, thank you for joining us and sharing your insight. And like I said, those statistics that someone had asked a question about, the meeting statistics, we will follow up with you individually to the individual who asked that question. We'll send you over the white paper so that you can see where all those stats come from. Thanks everyone for joining and spending the time with us today. We hope it was helpful.
Yeah, I too would like to thank Heather and Amanda. I hope everyone enjoyed the webinar. Please take time to fill out the evaluation survey. A link containing the survey and a recording of this webinar will be emailed to everyone shortly. Thanks again and have a great day.